Coming up on Network Africa, Nigeria celebrates 25 years of unbroken democracy. President Bola Tinubu pays tribute to heroes of democracy. Former South African President Jacob Zuma's MK party seeks to halt parliament election of country's president. Plus, International Labour Organization and partners around the world commemorate the World Day Against Child Labour. Hello and welcome to the program today. I'm Layo Olarinde. Happy Democracy Day to you. President Bola Tinubu is marking 25 years of unbroken democracy and the first Democracy Day anniversary in the life of his administration. In his statewide broadcast, the president acknowledged the contributions of Nigerians who were actively involved in the actualization of the June 12 mandate during the years of military dictatorship. While recalling his role as one of those who midwifed the birth of our current democratic governance and ideals, President Tinubu said he is morally and constitutionally bound to protect it.
We lost great heroes and heroines along the way. And this struggle, the winner of June 12, 1993 presidential election, Chief MKO Abiola, the most significant symbol of our democratic struggle, his wife, Kudirat, General Shehu Musa Yar'Adua, and Pa Alfred Iwani, amongst others, sacrificed their very lives. They bravely surrendered their fortunes so that our nation might have a better one. Let us honor the memories of Chief Anthony Enahoro, Chief Abraham Adesanya, Commodore Dan Sulaiman, Chief Athon Wanko, Chief Chukwuemeka Ezebe, Admiral Ndibusi Kanu, Chief Frank Kokori, Chief Bola Ige, Chief Adekunle Ajasin, Chief Gani Udaudu, Chief Ayo Fasami, Chief Gani Fawemi, Chief Olabi Idrojaye, Dr. Beko Ransom Kuti, Chima Ubani, and others who have transited to higher realm. The sacrifices of General Alani Akinriyade, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, Professor Wole Soyinka, Chief Rap Obioha, Chief Colonel Adebayo, among many others, should never be forgotten. For at least 6 years, they bore the pain and difficulties of life in exile. We could not have won the battle against dictatorship without the irrepressible Nigerian journalists who mounted the barricades along with the pro-democracy activists. We celebrate them today, along with their media establishments, such as The Punch, The Guardian, National Concord, Tribune, The News and Temple, and Tel magazines. The undemocratic government of the day proscribed these media establishments and jailed their journalists for standing for free speech and civil liberties and the sanctity of the June 12 elections.
Well, President Tinubu also called for a collective commitment to what he describes as the realization of our economic democracy, for which he admitted is in desperate need of reforms, promising to always listen to the yearnings of the people. The president, in his speech, also highlighted the negotiations with organized labor for a new national minimum wage.
I understand the economic difficulties we face as a nation right now. Our economy has been in desperate need of reform for decades. It has been unbalanced because it was built on the flawed foundations and over-reliance on revenue from exploitation of oil. The reforms we have initiated are intended to create a stronger, better foundation for future growth. There is no doubt that the reform has occasioned hardship. I feel your pains. Yet the unnecessary repairs required to fix the economy over the long run so that everyone has access to economic opportunity, fair pay, and compensation for its endeavor and labor. As we continue to reform the economy, I shall always listen to the people and will never turn my back on you. In this spirit, we have negotiated in good faith and with open arms with organized labor on a new national minimum wage. We shall soon send our executive bill to the National Assembly to enshrine what has been agreed upon as part of our law for the next 5 years or less.
Well, June 12 is also the commemoration of the World Day Against Child Labor. SDG Target 8.7 pushes for all to take immediate and effective steps to eradicate forced labor, end modern slavery and human trafficking, and also to ensure the prohibition and elimination of all forms of child labor. According to the United Nations, meaningful strides may have been taken to reduce child labor over time, but recent years have seen global trends reverse, making it more urgent to join efforts to push back and end it in all its manifestations. Well, this year, which marks the 25th anniversary of the adoption of the Convention on the Worst Forms of Child Labor, the UN's theme is simply let's act on our commitments. Well, joining us now on the show for more on this is lawyer and child rights activist Mr. Taiwo Akilami. Thank you, Mr. Akilami, for your time on the program.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be with you today.
Well, in commemoration of today, which is also the World Day Against Child Labor, let's talk about the foundational factors that lead to people engaging in child labor.
Well, I think the foundational factors differ from country to country. In Nigeria, for example, I think the major issues we are dealing with is lack of provision of what we call social protection. Social protection is what the International Labour Organization has found to be the root cause of child labor across the world, particularly in developing or underdeveloped countries like Nigeria. And so what we have found is that social protection talks about availability of social amenity, availability of social safety nets for parents, provision of employment, provision of shelter, provision of basic needs of life. When those things are lacking, parents are put under pressure. And when they are put under pressure, the next thing is that they are not able to cater for their children. When they are not able to cater for their children, what happens is that the children begin to cater for themselves. But you also find instances where children are not are orphaned as a result of different issues, particularly when you talk about the banditry and the terrorism issue, particularly in the northern part of Nigeria. You find that many children are orphaned. They are found in IDP camps. And in these IDP camps, basic provisions are not made available. So these children have to find a way to fend for themselves, not only for themselves, but for their siblings. So actually, when you look at it critically, it is lack of social protection, lack of commitment on the part of those who govern to make available what is the lot, what is supposed to be the dividends of democracy to the people who actually labored and fought for this democracy.
Now, where does one draw the line in children, helping their parents and the work being defined as too arduous for a child?
Well, if you look at the law very well, look at the Child Rights Act 2003, which lifted the entire provisions of the Labour Act as something to work with when it comes to drawing the lines and defining child labor. You find that the law does not say children cannot work. What the law says is that that work must not lead to stopping their development. I mean, their physical development, educational development, mental development. And so when we situate child labor under that, we must now conclude that that does not exempt children from being responsible at home, but from supporting their parents in domestic responsibilities. That is not what the law is talking about. But anything that has a component of trafficking, anything that has a component of servitude, anything that has a component of taking the child away from the capacity to learn, to be part of the society, those are the things that the law is against. Those things that lead to the exploitation of children, whatever it is. But when it comes to working with parents at home, helping parents out, I don't think the law is against that.
All right, sir. And, on this Democracy Day, 25 years of unbroken democracy, how would you assess the country's achievement on ending child labor, which incidentally is commemorating 25 years also?
Well, I wrote somewhere this morning that it's 25 years of uninterrupted democracy, but it's 25 years of 25 years of uninterrupted democratic governance. But it is 25 years of interruption of the ideals of an egalitarian society. And our children bear the brunt most. You find that child labor has taken a new dimension in our country. You find that there was a news report last week of children, flooding the federal capital territory, to fend for themselves, to beg and to do all of that. So you find that the way things are, I don't think we've done too much in solving the problem of child labor. As you are aware, that 20 million Nigerian children are said to be out of school. Now, what are these children involved in, if you may ask? And between age 5, children as young as age 5 to 14 are said to be involved in child labor in Nigeria, in diverse parts of the country. So I think there's a lot to be done. That is why the theme of this year becomes more relevant than ever before, that we have to make a commitment to ensure that we fight and advocate and implement policies and programs and projects that will stamp out child labor, because once our children are distracted by child labor, their destiny is truncated.
All right, then. Thank you so much, Mr. Taiwo Akilame, lawyer and child rights activist. Thank you so much for your time on the program, and happy Democracy Day to you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for having me.
We move on now to South Africa. Former President Jacob Zuma's party is asking the country's highest court to stop the newly elected National Assembly from sitting for the first time this Friday. It's a key date because that is when members of parliament are due to vote for the country's president. However, Mr. Zuma's Umkhonto Wesizwe party, the MK party, is boycotting the session, claiming there were irregularities in last month's general election, although it has not provided evidence to support this. Mr. Zuma is a former ANC leader and is an ally turned enemy of President Cyril Ramaphosa, who is seeking a second term, I beg your pardon. Well, Mr. Ramaphosa is the leader of the African National Congress, and that party lost its parliamentary majority for the first time since it took power at the end of the apartheid system in 1994. The ANC won 40% of the vote, but that was not enough for them to be able to govern alone. We'll take a break now on the program. Still ahead. UNESCO says the world is not doing enough to protect the oceans, releasing its report on the new data that's showing the threats to the water bodies. Please join us again. Welcome back to the program. We continue in Malawi. The government says the late Vice President Saulus Chilima will be honored with a state funeral after he died in a plane crash along with 8 other people. President Lazarus Chakwera had already announced 21 days of national mourning on Tuesday when the wreckage of a small military plane carrying Mr. Chilima and the 8 others was discovered in a mountainous area in the country's north. Well, flags are also expected to fly at half staff across the southern African nation during this period of mourning. A ministerial committee has also been set up to oversee preparations for the state funeral, but no date has been announced yet. President Chakwera previously said that there were 10 people on the plane, but the government is now saying that the total on board was 9 when it crashed. Well, riots have erupted in Algerian desert city after months of water shortages left taps running dry and also forced residents to queue to access water for their households. In Tiaret, that's a central Algerian city of less than 200,000 people located southwest of Algiers, residents are protesting that their water is being rationed. The unrest follows demands from President Abdelmajid Tebboune to rectify the suffering. At a Council of Ministers meeting last week, he implored his cabinet to implement emergency measures in Tiaret. Now, several government ministers were later sent to ask for an apology from the residents and also to promise that access to drinking water would be sorted out. A new report by the United Nations has found that the biodiversity and carefully balanced ecosystems of oceans is being increasingly harmed by the impact of humans. The UN Education, Science and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, says the world has been treating the oceans like a free-for-all, and this needs to stop. It says climate change is disrupting life in the oceans, which are facing multiple hazards and being harmed by pollution, acidification, and a loss of biodiversity. With submissions from 100 scientists from around the world, the report aims to sound the alarm on what UNESCO says is new data on threats to the oceans.
Is loss of oxygen, there is acidification, there is sea level rise, of course, causing effects on coastal communities and coastal systems. There is deterioration of blue carbon, vegetation in the ocean. There is a steady and strong growth of pollutants that relates to plastic, but also other chemical pollutions. The world has agreed to protect 30% of the ocean, but it's important to protect the right places. So you protect places where there is actually life to protect. And we know, and this report demonstrates, that 70% of the threatened species in the ocean actually take refuge in marine protected areas.
And here in Lagos, the government says it aligns with the urgency for actions in mitigating the effects of climate change and championing adaptation initiatives at the local and international levels. The State Deputy Governor, Kadri Hamzat, made this comment at the opening of the 3-day 10th Lagos International Climate Change Summit, where he launched the Lagos Climate Adaptation and Resilience Plan and Lagos Climate Change Mainstreaming Strategy to reduce emissions and mitigate to climate change challenges. He says government understands that the issue of climate change is not a distant threat, but present reality, that requires immediate solutions.
The Deputy Governor of Lagos State, Mr. Kadri Hamzat, foreign delegates, former Governor of Lagos and the former Minister of Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Fashola, environmental experts and others converge on the Lagos Continental Hotel, Victoria Island for the 10th Lagos International Climate Change Summit.
We create a renewable energy product paper.
All concerned stakeholders are here to discuss the effect of climate change in Lagos and how the government is championing local adaptation initiatives to sustain the state, which is being highlighted by the State Commissioner for Environment and Water Resources.
Celebrating a decade of climate change summit, we have witnessed a transformative shift in global consciousness towards climate action. We are determined to mobilize resources at an unprecedented scale to finance the transition to a low-carbon economy and support those most vulnerable to the impact of climate change.
The Consul General from the Kingdom of Netherlands, Michel Dielen, says now is the time to take drastic decisions that will address climate change.
we talk about Eco-Atlantic and how that, with Dutch technology, by the way, but how that protected Victoria Island. Yeah, wonderful, but look what happens down the coast. Many houses in Lekki, for example, will flood because they are built on a lower space, below sea level, even without climate change. That is a problem. The beauty of this is that all these things can be solved.
Mr. Babatunde Fashola says climate change is triggered majorly by human conduct and sometimes natural causes that can be mitigated.
To the problem at Okwaja as being connected somewhat to the defense of Victoria Island, nothing can be further from the truth. Coastal erosion is a real-life issue. So protecting one place doesn't necessarily mean it is transferring the problem. It just means that more work needs to be done. So as we have finished work in the defense of Victoria Island and Ikoyi, I think what will require funding support is the reactivation, if that is the right word, of the plan to construct more groins, because those were the tools that we deployed then along the coastal way.
The summit provides an opportunity for the Deputy Governor to explain the steps taken to build a waste-to-energy plant that will provide electricity in the state and electricity vehicles on Lagos roads.
For us in Lagos, it's about what do we need to do to sustain and to build a resilient city. If you build and you don't leave 15 meters to your drainage, it will go. And we have no apology. It's not about where you come from or the God that you worship. No. It has to do with us living well so that for the collective good of everybody. We just had an agreement with a Netherlands government. We signed an MOU giving them 2,000 for building around Ekpe, or some building and a 2,000 ton daily of waste to convert to energy. That's moving progressively.
The Global Sixth Assessment Report, AR6 of the IPCC, serves as a reminder of the urgency to act against climate change and mobilize climate finance for projects that will safeguard the state from natural disasters.
And that's it on the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Olarinde. Happy Democracy Day.